My name is Clara Evans. I'm 33, and this morning my phone woke me up with what felt like a military-grade assault. I counted 289 messages before I gave up. Most of them were furious accusations that I had single-handedly destroyed my family's dream vacation. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. A constant stream of notifications from my sister Olivia, whose texts were typed in furious all caps, detailing how I'd callously abandoned her and her twin boys at the airport. After 6 long years of being my sister's on-call, unpaid nanny whenever she needed a moment to herself, I had finally put myself first. Before I dive into how I became the family pariah in a single morning, I'd love to know where you're watching from. And please hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been caught between preserving your own sanity and bending to family pressure. I was raised in a tight-knit family in a quiet suburb of Chicago. My parents, Robert and Susan Evans, drilled into us that family loyalty trumped everything else. Blood is thicker than water wasn't just a saying in our house. It was the unspoken law, a mantra you could find stitched into throw pillows and hanging in frames on our living room wall. As a child, that motto felt like a warm, secure blanket. But as I got older, it started to feel more like a chain, shackling me and preventing me from drawing any healthy lines in the sand. I poured everything I had into building a career as a financial analyst for a major firm in the city. I worked my way through graduate school, putting in the late nights and sacrificing weekends to climb the corporate ladder. Last year, I finally landed my own office with a view. My parents would offer polite, distant nods when I mentioned my achievements, but they never seemed genuinely impressed. My mother would say something like, "Oh, that's lovely, dear. Did you know Olivia is co-chairing the PTA bake sale this year?" My professional milestones were always a footnote to my sister's domestic life. Olivia is 3 years my senior and has been the sun around which our family has orbited since we were kids. She was the prom queen, the one who married her high school sweetheart, Mark, and the first to make our parents grandparents. Being Olivia's little sister meant constantly living in her shadow, a shadow that only grew longer and darker when her twins, Leo and Noah, were born. Now, don't get me wrong, I adore my nephews. They are wonderful little boys, all bright eyes and boundless energy. But their arrival 6 years ago fundamentally altered my relationship with Olivia and redefined my role within our family. Mark's job in sales keeps him on the road constantly, sometimes for 20 days or more in a month, leaving Olivia to manage the twins by herself. When they were newborns, I was more than happy to pitch in. I'd come over on weekends, drop off a home-cooked meal on a Wednesday, and babysit here and there so Olivia could get a haircut or have a much-needed lunch with her friends. But what started as occasional help slowly, insidiously, became an expectation. It evolved from a favor to a duty. If I mentioned I had plans, my mother would say, "Oh, but Olivia is counting on you." It's not as if you have children of your own to tie you down, as if my time was a void to be filled, inherently less valuable because I wasn't a mother. Family vacations became the ultimate test of my endurance. 3 years ago, we rented a cabin on a lake in Wisconsin. When I arrived, I was informed that I would be sharing a room with the 6-year-old twins, while Olivia and Mark enjoyed the spacious master suite. "The boys are just more comfortable with you. You know how it is," Olivia said, breezily handing me their little suitcases. I spent that entire week as a glorified camp counselor, up at the crack of dawn with the boys, making their breakfasts, supervising them by the water, and putting them to bed, only to repeat the cycle the next day. The trip to the Rockies last year was an even more blatant exploitation. Olivia and Mark would just vanish for hours, sometimes entire days, leaving me with Leo and Noah. When I tried to talk to her about it, she looked at me with genuine bewilderment. "But you have such a natural way with them." "And they just adore their Aunt Clara," she'd say, completely oblivious to the fact that I, too, had come on vacation hoping for a little rest and relaxation, not a full-time childcare gig. After every one of these trips, I'd drive home feeling utterly drained and simmering with resentment, swearing to myself that next time I would be firm. Next time I would set boundaries. But each time I tried, my efforts were met with wounded sighs, well-practiced guilt trips, and those tired reminders of how family is supposed to be there for one another. 3 months ago, during our weekly Sunday dinner, my father made a grand announcement. He had booked a family trip to a resort in Barbados. 10 days in paradise, he declared, beaming with pride. "I've been saving up for this for years, all expenses paid. My treat for my favorite people in the world." The table erupted in cheers. Everyone except for me. I managed a weak, tight-lipped smile, my mind already fast-forwarding to the inevitable reality of this vacation. Once the initial wave of excitement subsided, I cautiously mentioned that my work schedule was intense and that a 10-day trip might be difficult. "You can't possibly miss this," my mother said, her tone leaving no room for discussion. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime family memory we're making." Olivia reached over and gave my hand a squeeze. Besides, the boys have been talking nonstop about building sandcastles with their Aunt Clara. And with that, my fate was sealed. No one had bothered to ask if I wanted to go. No one had checked my availability before clicking purchase. No one had stopped to consider that I might have my own plans or desires. I was simply expected to fall in line and perform my designated role. As the dinner conversation shifted to snorkeling and island tours, I sat there, a silent calculator in my head, tallying up the hours of this trip that would be spent watching my nephews so everyone else could fully enjoy their version of paradise. I left my parents' house that night with a cold, heavy knot in the pit of my stomach, a knot that would only tighten over the next few weeks. The family group chat, which my mother had christened Barbados Bound 2025, became a constant source of anxiety. She posted daily countdowns, packing suggestions, and links to excursions. My own input was largely ignored, unless, of course, it pertained to the twins. "Clara, could you look up some kid-friendly beaches near the resort?" Olivia would text. Or, "Clara, what are some things you could do with the boys while Mark and I try out that adults-only catamaran cruise?" I tried, I really did, to set some boundaries during our weekly video planning calls. "I'm really happy to spend time with Leo and Noah," I said on one call, my voice more hesitant than I intended. But I was also hoping to do some exploring on my own. There's a rainforest hike I read about that I'd love to try. My mother let out a light, dismissive laugh. "Oh, honey, this is a family vacation. We do things as a family." "Besides," Olivia added quickly, "Mark and I were really counting on you for Tuesday night. There's this famous restaurant we wanted to try." And Thursday afternoon, Mark chimed in from off-screen, "I've got a tea time at this world-class golf course." Every planning session was a fresh layer of assumptions, another brick in the wall of expectations being built around me. It was a schedule of my time, made by them, for them, without ever asking me. Then about 2 months before the trip, a lifeline appeared. My firm was in the final stages of a major merger, and as the lead analyst on the project, I would be spearheading the final presentation. The timeline was tight, and the final pitch to the board was tentatively scheduled for the same week as the Barbados trip, but it would be held in San Francisco. I brought it up at our next Sunday dinner. "There's a chance I might have to fly back early, or maybe even miss a couple of days," I explained, trying to sound apologetic. This merger could lead to a huge promotion for me. The reaction was swift and unanimous. "You can work from the hotel," my father said, as if pitching a multi-billion-dollar merger was something you could do from a lounge chair with a piña colada. "Family comes first, Clara," my mother recited, as if on cue. "Work will still be there when you get back." "The boys will be heartbroken," Olivia said, her eyes already welling up. They've been crossing off the days on their calendar. Even Mark jumped in. "Surely someone else on your team can cover for you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip." I tried to articulate the significance of this moment in my career, but it was like speaking a foreign language. No one in my family had ever prioritized professional ambition the way I had. To them, my dedication to my job was, at best, a strange hobby, and at worst, a character flaw. I left that dinner feeling completely cornered, the trip looming over me like a storm cloud. That night, I called my friend Chloe Davis, the one person who could see my family dynamic for what it was. "They're doing it again," I said, pacing the length of my small apartment. 10 days of being the designated nanny while they all live it up. "Then don't go," Chloe said, her voice clear and simple. "I can't just not go. They've been planning it for months. My dad paid for everything. Clara, how many more vacations are you going to let them ruin for you? How many more holidays? How many more weekends? At what point does it stop?" Her words echoed in my head for days. The final planning meeting was the straw that broke the camel's back. We were all at my parents' house 1 week before our departure to go over the last-minute details. Olivia proudly announced that she'd arranged for our rooms. "I made sure we have connecting rooms," she said, beaming. "That way the boys can just run back and forth. They can even sleep in your room a few nights if they want." I just stared at her, speechless. She hadn't even thought to ask. She had just decided that I would have no private space for 10 days. "And we've got the schedule all worked out," she continued, oblivious. "Mom and Dad are taking the boys on Monday while Mark and I hit the spa. You'll have them Tuesday for our fancy dinner. Wednesday, we can all do a family beach day. And then," she paused, exchanging a conspiratorial glance with Mark, before continuing with a burst of excitement, "We have the most amazing news. Mark and I booked a 3-day romantic retreat at this incredible couples-only resort on the other side of the island, from Thursday to Saturday. Mom and Dad already said they'd be too tired after Monday, so we were thinking you could just—" I didn't hear the rest of the sentence. "A 3-day retreat. They had planned to abandon me with 2 6-year-olds for nearly half of the vacation." The audacity was breathtaking. In that single moment, something inside me finally broke. The cumulative weight of years of being undervalued, of my time being treated as a public utility, of being expected to erase my own needs for their convenience, it all came crashing down on me. I forced a tight smile, excused myself to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face, my hands shaking. I looked at the person in the mirror and barely recognized the weary, defeated woman staring back. When had I become so passive, so terrified of saying no? As I walked back into the living room, a silent, cold resolve settled over me. I would get out of this. I had to. Despite the rebellion raging inside me, I played my part. I nodded along with the plans, packed my bags, set my out-of-office reply, and arrived at my parents' house at 5 a.m. on the day of departure for our shared ride to the airport. But I had an ace up my sleeve. The merger presentation in San Francisco wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was confirmed. I had told my boss I couldn't make it because of the non-refundable family trip, but the night before we left, I sent her an email. My plans had changed, I wrote, and I would be there. She was thrilled and immediately forwarded me the booking confirmation for a flight to San Francisco. A flight that, by a stroke of beautiful irony, was scheduled to leave from the exact same terminal as our Barbados flight, just 2 hours earlier. The morning of the trip was pure chaos. My parents were running around, double-checking luggage and passports. Olivia was struggling to wrangle the twins, who were buzzing with an uncontrollable sugary excitement. Mark was, predictably, on a work call that he swore would be over any minute. In the airport shuttle, Leo and Noah were practically bouncing off the ceiling, while Olivia scrolled through Instagram. "Clara," she said, not even looking up from her phone, "can you just make sure the boys don't spill their snacks? Maybe play a game with them or something? They're getting a little wild." I bit back a sharp reply and spent the entire 45-minute drive to O'Hare playing I Spy, while everyone else zoned out. It was a perfect, miserable preview of the next 10 days, and it cemented my decision. At the airport, Olivia's entitlement went into overdrive. As we neared the check-in desk, she shoved the twins' bright blue backpacks at me. "Can you get these? My shoulder is killing me." Then, as we shuffled toward the security line, Mark's phone rang again. "I have to take this," he said, veering off. Olivia let out a theatrical sigh and turned to me. "Clara, I desperately need to use the restroom. Can you just take the boys through security? We'll meet you at the gate." I glanced at my watch. My San Francisco flight was set to board in 40 minutes. The Barbados flight wasn't for another 2 hours. "Actually, I need to use the restroom too," I said, my voice steady. Olivia's face soured. "Can't it wait? The line is going to be a nightmare, and we don't want to miss our flight." "Our flight isn't for 2 hours," I reminded her calmly. "Yes, but the boys are getting hyper. It's just better if we get through security now, and they can run around on the other side." Translation: "It's better for me if you deal with them now so I can have a break." 6 years of this. 6 years of her convenience always taking precedence. 6 years of being the family shock absorber. "Fine," I said. "But be quick. You're a lifesaver," she chirped, already walking away. "We won't be long." I stood there, a small boy's hand in each of mine, watching my sister and brother-in-law vanish into the throng of travelers. My parents were at another counter dealing with the larger checked bags and were supposed to meet us at the gate. As I guided the boys toward the security checkpoint, I saw the big overhead sign, Gates B1 through B20 to the right. Our Barbados flight was at Gate B18. My San Francisco flight was at Gate B12. And in that moment, the decision became real. I knelt down to look the twins in the eye. "Leo, Noah, I need you to be big boys and do something very important for me, okay? See that nice woman over there in the airport uniform? I need you to stand right here with her for just 2 minutes while I go get something. Can you do that?" "It's a very important job." They nodded seriously, always eager for a mission. I walked over to the airport employee, a woman with a kind face and a name tag that read, Patricia. "Excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I have a bit of an emergency and need to run to the restroom. Would you mind keeping an eye on my nephews for just 60 seconds? Their parents are right behind us in line." Patricia looked hesitant for a moment, but the boys were standing perfectly still, looking angelic. "Just be very quick," she said. I gave each boy a tight hug, told them I'd be right back, and then I turned and walked, not ran, toward Gate B12. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. Was I really doing this? Was I actually walking away from my family in the middle of an airport? Yes. Yes, I was. I didn't look over my shoulder. I walked with a steady, purposeful stride to my gate where they had just announced final boarding. I switched my phone to airplane mode, handed my boarding pass to the agent, and walked down the jet bridge onto the plane to San Francisco. As I found my seat and buckled myself in, a bizarre cocktail of emotions swirled inside me. There was guilt, of course, and a cold dread of the inevitable confrontation. But overriding it all was a profound, intoxicating sense of relief. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I had chosen myself. I had refused to be the family doormat. The plane pushed back. Through the small oval window, I could see the terminal where my family was likely, at that very moment, realizing I was gone. Olivia would be frantic. My parents would be confused. The twins might even be crying. I squeezed my eyes shut as the plane thundered down the runway. There was no going back now. 3 hours later, we touched down in San Francisco. I switched my phone off airplane mode and watched, with a sort of detached horror, as the notifications flooded in. 52 missed calls, an endless scroll of text messages, a dozen voicemails. The first text was from Olivia. "Where are you?" "The boys said you left them with some random woman. Call me." From my mother. "Clara, what on earth is going on? Everyone is worried sick." From my father. "This is not funny, Clara. Call us immediately." As I scrolled, the tone shifted from worried to furious. By the time I had landed, my entire family had united in their outrage. I took a steadying breath and read through the messages, each one a fresh sting. Olivia, "I cannot believe you abandoned my children in an airport. What kind of monster does that? They are devastated. They keep asking where Aunt Clara went. What am I supposed to tell them?" My father, Clara Evans, "I have never been more disappointed in my life. Your mother is in tears. Call us and explain yourself." My mother, "How could you do this to us, to those innocent little boys? I did not raise you to be this selfish." That last word hit me the hardest, selfish, because I refused to be their puppet anymore, because I finally advocated for myself, because I chose my career and my mental health over 10 days of being an unpaid nanny. I had voicemails from Olivia, alternating between hysterical sobs and venomous screaming. I sent a single, concise group text. "I am safe. I'm in San Francisco for the merger presentation I told you about. I am sorry for the worry, but I need some space. Enjoy Barbados." Then I turned my phone off again and hailed a cab to my hotel. My colleague, Rebecca, met me in the lobby. Her face fell when she saw me. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I realized my whole body was trembling. "Family stuff," I managed to say. "I'll be fine. Just need to focus on the presentation." Rebecca, bless her heart, didn't pry. She just handed me a binder with the presentation schedule and suggested we order room service to go over our strategy. That night, after she left, I cautiously turned my phone back on. The firestorm had grown. It wasn't just my immediate family anymore. The drama had gone wide. My Aunt Sylvia. "Your mother called me, hysterical. I don't know what's gotten into you, Clara." My cousin Tiffany. "Olivia is posting all about this on social media. Just thought you should know." Driven by a morbid curiosity, I opened Instagram. Olivia had been busy. There was a photo of Leo and Noah looking forlorn on a beach in Barbados, captioned, "Missing their aunt, who abandoned them right before our family vacation." Another post was a selfie of Olivia with red, puffy eyes. The pain when someone you trust most betrays you and ruins what was supposed to be a perfect family memory. The comments were a sea of sympathy for her and condemnation for me, the evil, selfish aunt. People who had never met me, who knew nothing of our history, were passing judgment. Only my cousin Megan sent a private message. "Don't let them get to you. They had this coming for years. Call me when you're ready." Alone in that sterile hotel room, thousands of miles away, I finally let myself break. I sobbed until my throat was raw. All the years of accumulated hurt, resentment, and guilt came pouring out. I cried for the little girl who always felt second best, for the woman who never learned how to say no, and for the aunt who loved her nephews dearly but just couldn't be the martyr her family demanded her to be. The next morning, a text from my mother landed like a punch to the gut. I don't recognize the daughter I raised. The Clara I know would never do this. I don't know if I can forgive this level of selfishness. There it was again. Selfish. In my family's dictionary, setting a boundary was the ultimate sin. Taking care of myself, pursuing my own goals, it was all just selfishness. And that's when it clicked. If this is what they called selfish, then maybe I needed to be selfish. Maybe it wasn't the insult they thought it was. I pulled my shoulders back, washed my face, and walked into that conference with a newfound determination. I wouldn't let them ruin this for me. I would ace this presentation and deal with the fallout later. While I was pouring my energy into work in San Francisco, the Barbados vacation was, by all accounts, imploding. The updates came from Megan, who was getting a running commentary from my distraught mother. According to Megan, Olivia was completely overwhelmed trying to manage the twins by herself. Without me there as her permanent backup, she was forced to be a full-time parent, a role she was clearly unequipped for. Aunt Susan says the boys had a total meltdown in a restaurant last night, Megan texted. Olivia couldn't handle it, and they had to leave before their food even came. She's blaming it on them being traumatized by you. But we both know it's because she has zero control over them. My parents, who had been dreaming of a tranquil getaway, were now on full-time grandparent duty. My father's golf plans were replaced with building sandcastles. My mother's elegant evening wear stayed in the suitcase while she chased the boys around the resort pool. Mark, who had been counting on me to cover for their 3-day romantic retreat, was livid. The resort had a strict no refunds policy, so they were out several $1,000s for a trip they now couldn't take. He and Olivia apparently had a massive shouting match in their hotel room, so loud that my parents had to intervene. The cracks in the family were showing. My father and Mark were furious with me, but also increasingly irritated with Olivia's helplessness. My mother remained staunchly on Team Olivia, convinced I had sabotaged the trip out of pure spite. And Olivia herself swung between incandescent rage and maudlin self-pity, her social media posts growing more dramatic by the hour. The peak of absurdity came on day 4. Leo tripped by the pool and scraped his knee. According to Megan, Olivia actually said, "This wouldn't have happened if Clara had been here watching them properly," as if I possessed some magical power to prevent skinned knees, as if her children's well-being was my responsibility, not hers. The tension festered until, on day 5, my father pulled the plug. The 10-day dream vacation was being cut short after just 1 week. No one was having fun. The twins were acting out. Olivia and Mark were barely speaking. My parents were exhausted. And the family consensus was clear. It was all my fault. On the 6th day, while I was delivering the presentation of my career in San Francisco, my family was boarding a flight back to Chicago, their shared resentment the only thing holding them together. Megan's final text was almost comical. They're coming home early, and they're planning an emergency family meeting to address the Clara situation. Aunt Susan used the word intervention. Thought you should be prepared. An intervention, as if setting a boundary was some kind of addiction. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I didn't feel guilty. I felt vindicated. Their inability to function without me had exposed the truth I'd suspected all along. I wasn't valued as Clara. I was valued for my function. I was a free, convenient service. That night, I sent one text to the group chat. I understand you're coming home early. I'll be back from San Francisco on Friday. I'm happy to talk then, but only if we can have a respectful conversation about boundaries and expectations. The replies were instantaneous and hostile. Olivia, boundaries? After what you did? My father, you don't get to set the terms after you ruined our trip. My mother, we raised you better than this, Clara. I turned my phone off. My boss was ecstatic about the presentation. The merger was a go. A promotion was all but guaranteed, but the professional victory felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that my family wouldn't celebrate with me. They would only see it as the selfish reason I had betrayed them. The San Francisco trip was a professional triumph. Our team's pitch was a home run. The client was thrilled, and my boss confirmed my promotion was being fast-tracked. I made new contacts, felt inspired, and even found time to be a tourist. Most importantly, I rediscovered what it felt like to exist for myself. I slept 8 full hours. I ate when I was hungry. I worked hard, but I also rested. These simple acts felt like radical luxuries. On my 3rd day there, I scheduled a video session with Dr. Anya Sharma, a therapist I'd been seeing on and off. I laid out the entire story for her. When I finished, she asked me a simple question. Clara, what would you say to a friend who told you this exact story? What advice would you give her? I thought for a moment. I'd tell her she deserves to be treated better, that it's not her job to be everyone else's safety net, that she has a right to her own life. Exactly, Dr. Sharma said, nodding. So why is it so difficult to offer yourself that same kindness? We spent the hour unpacking the toxic dynamics, how Olivia was forever the golden child and I was cast as the supporting actress, how our family system saw boundaries not as healthy, but as a threat. Your family is having what we call an extinction burst, she explained. You've changed the rules of the game, and they're escalating their old behaviors to force you back into your old role. It's incredibly uncomfortable, but it's a necessary step toward change. So what do? I asked. You remain consistent. You state your boundaries calmly and clearly. You refuse to over-explain or justify your feelings, and you begin to accept that they may never fully approve of your choices. I left that session feeling centered and strong. I drafted a calm, clear email to my family, explaining my perspective without apology. I detailed the years of being taken for granted, the constant assumptions, the disregard for my life outside of them. I ended by saying that I loved them and wanted a relationship, but not at the expense of my own mental health. Then I put it out of my mind and enjoyed my last 2 days in the city. The day before I flew home, my father called. His tone wasn't angry anymore, just weary and controlled. We need to talk when you get back, he said. I'd like that, I replied. Your mother and sister are deeply hurt, Clara. I understand that, and I'm hurt too. He sighed, a long, heavy sound. This just isn't like you. You've always been the dependable one. Dad, being dependable shouldn't mean being a doormat. There was a long silence on his end. Just come over Friday night for dinner. We'll sort this out. It was a start. When I walked into my own apartment Friday afternoon, it felt like a true sanctuary. My space, my rules, no demands. I took a long, hot shower and mentally prepared myself for the evening ahead. Dinner was excruciatingly tense. Olivia shot daggers at me from across the table. My mother punctuated the silence with dramatic sighs. My father tried to pretend everything was normal. After the plates were cleared, we gathered in the living room for the intervention. Olivia launched her attack immediately. How could you just leave my children at the airport? Do you have any idea how traumatized they are? I kept my voice even. I didn't abandon them, Olivia. I left them with an airport employee for less than a minute and ensured you knew their location. I'm sorry they were upset, but their reaction is a symptom of the unhealthy dynamic we've all created where they see me as a third parent. What is that supposed to mean? She snapped. It means for 6 years, you've used me as a co-parent without my consent and without any regard for my life. Oh, I'm sorry. Is spending time with your own nephews such a terrible burden? No, Olivia. I love Leo and Noah. The problem is being expected to care for them whenever it's convenient for you, without being asked, and without any respect for my own plans. My mother jumped in. Clara, you are being unbelievably selfish. Your sister needs support. Mom, needing support is one thing, demanding it is another. And yes, the boys need their aunt. But they need an aunt who is there because she wants to be, not because she's been guilt-tripped into it. My father finally spoke. The way you left, Clara, without a word, it was just wrong. I agree. It wasn't the ideal way to handle it, I conceded. But I tried talking to all of you. I told you about my work commitments. I told you I wanted some independence on this trip. No one listened. No one cared. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. The room went quiet. And the 3-day couples retreat? I continued, looking straight at Olivia and Mark. You planned to disappear and leave me with the boys without so much as a heads up? How is that respectful? To my utter shock, Mark shifted uncomfortably. She has a point, he said quietly. We just assumed she'd do it. Olivia whipped her head toward him, her eyes flashing with betrayal. Whose side are you on? I'm not on a side, he said, but you have to see it from her perspective, Liv. How would you feel? For the first time, a flicker of something other than anger crossed my sister's face. The conversation went on for hours. It was heated and tearful. But for the first time, I didn't back down. I didn't apologize for my feelings. I refused to be cast as the villain. As I was leaving, my father walked me to the door. I still don't agree with how you did it, he said. But I'm starting to see that we have taken you for granted. And that's on us. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a crack in the wall. The next few weeks were a cold war. Olivia gave me the silent treatment. My mother sent passive-aggressive texts about how much the boys missed me. But in my own space, I was finding peace. I got my promotion. I reconnected with friends. I joined a hiking club. I started living a life that was fully my own. The first real thaw came from Mark. He called and asked to meet for coffee. Olivia doesn't know I'm here, he said. She'd see it as a betrayal. Then why are you here? I asked. He stared into his cup. Because you were right. About all of it. We've all used you. After you left for San Francisco, it all fell apart. I realized how much I just relied on you to be there. I'm sorry, Clara, and I want to help fix this. Not by going back to how it was, but by building something better. That conversation was the turning point. Mark talked to my dad. My dad talked to my mom. My mother called me, her voice subdued. Help me understand, Clara. I'm trying. I met her for lunch. I explained as gently as I could how it felt to have my life perpetually dismissed. I just thought you were happy to help, she admitted, since you don't have kids of your own. I love being with the boys, Mom, I said, but as their aunt, not as a default parent. Heather was the last holdout. She finally agreed to talk, but only with a family therapist. In Dr. Carter's neutral office, it all came out. She's my sister, Heather said, as if that explained everything. Family helps family. Yes, Dr. Carter said gently, but help that is freely given is different from help that is demanded. One builds a relationship, the other breaks it. It took several sessions, but slowly, painfully, she started to see. Reconnecting with my nephews was the easiest and hardest part. The first time I saw them at a park, they ran to me, full of hugs and questions about my trip. "Mommy said you left because you didn't want to be with us," Leo said quietly. My heart ached. "That's not true at all," I said, kneeling down. "I love being with you. Sometimes grown-ups just need a little quiet time to take care of themselves, so they can be the best aunt they can be." Our family slowly started building new, healthier patterns. We went to therapy. My parents started asking about my work. Olivia started asking, not telling. 2 months after the Barbados disaster, we had our first family dinner that didn't feel like a minefield. There was no tension, no agenda, just a family, enjoying each other's company. As I drove home, I realized the airport escape hadn't been an ending. It was a beginning. By blowing up the unhealthy dynamic, I had forced us all to rebuild something better. Heather was becoming a more capable mother. Mark was a more present father. And I was learning that setting a boundary didn't mean losing a connection. In fact, it made the connection more real. The hardest part wasn't walking away at the airport. It was learning that loving my family had to start with loving myself enough to say no. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. It helps to know you're not alone. Don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you, and subscribe for more. Thank you for listening. And remember, healthy boundaries are what make relationships truly healthy.